Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Wong, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with dignitaries and students, President, and my friends I know, Gloria, and my sister's house supporters, one of the boards that I was happy to serve and privileged to serve with people, to see Nilda Valmores, their executive director. Thank you for being here. I understand I'll be speaking to you very briefly for the next 10 minutes or so, and then take questions and answers, questions from the audience. What I want to say to you about your forum today, based on my experience, is that mentors come in every shape, size, color, gender, age, and at all stages of your life, at all stages of your development, in school, in profession, in motherhood, in wifehood. Mentorship comes and is useful in all aspects of your life. Sometimes mentors are thrust upon you, and other times you seek them out because you have a goal in mind and you are on the cutting edge of your life and you don't know how to accomplish that goal, or you have accomplished it and now you need to execute it, and that's where mentors come in. I think about my life having been introduced to Gloria, frankly, through mentorship of all my Filipina aunties. Those were aunties who were thrust upon me. I grew up in the Filipino community here in Sacramento in the 50s and 60s, long before communities integrated socially. So Filipino community in Sacramento would associate amongst ourselves through dances and parties and parades and holy days and at church. And the way we organized ourselves primarily was through the Filipino aunties. And they were these beautiful women who would order you around the place, and you had no ability to ask questions, question authority, or offer a new or different way of doing it. And yet when I look back on my years growing up in the Filipino community, probably from since I was a toddler to, well, even to this day, my Filipino aunties brought their leadership, things they knew about organizing, living a life, finding efficiencies and getting results. They were all hard workers, mostly from working in the fields, mostly from organizing large families. And they came together with business in mind. We need to put on this dinner, we're going to have a scholarship, there'll be a parade, and we're going to sell raffle tickets. This amongst like 15 women. And yes, they got it all done. And they always did it not only for their own pleasure, but also to educate and bring about the really knowledge of those of us in the community. I was a hapless victim of mentorship. And now when I look back on it, I appreciate all that they did, and I look at the due care they took in preparing me for experiences that I could never have had elsewhere. They had the vision to bring Gloria to the Filipino community to speak to us. She came out onto a stage in an un-air-conditioned hot summer day. We're all sitting on chairs. Half of us don't even know what a lawyer is, don't know anyone who does this kind of work, and they show us Gloria. I don't remember what Gloria said, but I know my mother did, and my mother sat next to me and she threw me the elbow and she said, "You could do that." I didn't know what it was, but I knew it impressed my mother, and I knew very little impressed my mother, and that I was here with her listening to Gloria speak. And that's one aspect of the kind of mentorship that is thrust upon you, that maybe in retrospect you look back on and say, thank goodness I was the beneficiary of so much goodwill that I couldn't even really tell that it was goodwill at the time. And I learned a lot of my leadership and a lot of my collaboration of bringing people to the table and believing that only a few of us can move mountains, because it's that kind of faith and that kind of spirit and that kind of impetus that you get from mentorship that makes you feel that you can accomplish things that on your own make you wonder and maybe hold you back. I've always seen Gloria, in my view, as to this day a woman of many wonders, and I admire still her energy. I'm always getting an update from Gloria's many admirers in the Capitol who tell me where Gloria is and what she's doing. I don't know if you know that, Gloria, but I get a running report. I also think about when I went to community college. I went to a community college for financial reasons, and also because my parents at that point, apart from my sister who was also at a community college, never thought about going to a four-year college or university. It just wasn't anything that we thought about in that generation of Filipino. My mother and father came from farm labor. They didn't think about sending us to Cal or UCLA or San Luis Obispo or Sac State in our first 4 years out of high school. So I went to a community college. I went to a community college a little bit untethered. And there I met my speech coach, who to this day is a mentor to me. He's in his 70s. I saw him about 3 weeks ago, maybe longer. I saw him in February, and there he was, happy to see me. I was so happy to see him because what he taught me, he was also in a way thrust upon me as a mentor. But when I later found out all that he knew and all that he was willing to tell me, I sought him out. And we formed the kind of relationship where he would just tell me that I was wrong, or he would refuse to hear my failings. He was my speech coach. And in those days, you had to enter 4 categories of speech in order to travel with the team. And I would tell him, well, I can do 2, but I don't think I can do 3. And I certainly can't do a speech that's supposed to be comedic. And he'd say, don't tell me at 17, 18 years of age of what you cannot do. Don't tell me that. You go out there and you do it. And of course, I was also too young to question authority. Wanted to travel on that bus to San Jose with the team, so I did it. And what I found out was, in his mentorship and his years of working with students, he knew students, and he knows their development, a lot like your professors, and they knew to push me. He knew to not let me set my own limitations as a teenager. And to this day, I am friends with him and grateful for what he did. I'm also grateful for the fact that as a mentor to me, he was also mentoring probably 10 or 15 other students. And these 10 or 15 other students he would bring together. And they were Vietnam veterans, and they were divorced mothers, and they were men trying to make a second career going back to college in order to get the skills to succeed in a different profession. And so I was not only mentored by him, but when I came together with these other group of people, I was mentored by them. I'd never met a Vietnam War veteran. I'm 18 years old. I don't know why he has these views or why he has these beliefs, and he would share them with me. Same with a nurse who was trying to start over. Same with a man who was looking for a better paying job than a sales clerk at JCPenney. That kind of mentorship brought all relationships together, and to this day, I will ask about them. I'll find out how they are. They will do the same with me because we grew together. And that was a mentorship thrust upon me that I later sought out. You know, when I went to law school and I started in the law, it was predominantly a male-dominated organization. And it still is, even in the judicial branch, although it is changing and beginning to reflect more of the demographics of California. And so when you think of someone like me who came from a relatively challenged income family, large minority family, youngest girl in a pretty male-dominated culture, I was probably an unlikely candidate to be a trial attorney. I'm an even more unlikely candidate to be a judge. And I will tell you, as being Chief Justice of California, I have taken a journey that no other Chief Justice in this state has seen yet. And that's because California is changing. There are many opportunities. And when you put yourself out there, as I did as a young lawyer, I found many, many mentors. And they were not other women, because there just weren't that many women in community practicing the law in a trial court setting. And so I found visionary men and ethnic men, men who had been professionally challenged because of the color of their skin or their culture, who passed on to me ideas and told me to keep trying and saw opportunity and encouraged me to apply for opportunity. These were people who were mentors in a professional way, who saw how the world would change, who saw how California would change, and they encouraged faces like mine to be part of that change. Quite honestly, had I not met those people, I'm not sure that I would be standing here in front of you today. I'm sure I'd be a very happy, satisfied lawyer, but I'm not sure I would have put myself out there, but for the confidence and the encouragement I received from them. Now I think about all of the mentors I have in my life, and I think that it's really like having your own personal board of directors. if you considered yourself the most valuable top Fortune 500 company in the world, which you are, you would want to have a board of directors who would be available for you to bounce ideas off, to give you advice, who could tell you things honestly, who could give you faithful, constructive criticism, at the same time encourage you, that you know they have your best intent at heart. And so I think that I do have a variety of people who are my board of directors. And they're not judges and lawyers in other states, and they're not the attorney general, although I know all them and I like them. But they are really salt of the earth people. I need advice. I go to one of my mentor bosses who himself went through the civil rights movement as an African-American man in Mississippi, who went to integrated schools, came out to California and faced challenge as a professional, as a lawyer in the Capitol. I go to him when I have questions of conscience. I go to him when I have questions of integrity and character. When I can't resolve that myself, I sort of have a what would so-and-so do? I go to him and I have lunch with him and I run it by him. I'm always getting thoughtful advice. May not take it, maybe I'll take it, but it makes me think about something in a different way. When I have challenging legal issues, which confines me to speak to only a very few people because of the canons of judicial ethics, I go to my colleagues on the bench, intensely compassionate, brilliant, private people who share with me what they believe is their philosophy of the development of law and why it should be incremental and why it should be cautious, because it affects so many people when a ruling comes from the California Supreme Court. When it comes to questions of raising children, I have mentors. I talk to my mother, I talk to my aunties, I talk to people who've raised children, who've raised a variety of children, who've lived a long time, who can tell me what their advice is about that. I have a friend who's a business person. When it comes to budget issues, I go to this old retired businessman and I ask him about budget and I ask him about the lay of the land. He's a mentor to me. He has no interest in how my decision may be, but he gives me a global view of the world, makes me a better person for thinking about it, even if I don't ultimately follow his recommendation or his advice. So I say to you that mentorship comes in many sizes and it serves you. I suppose I should also say, sort of like what my mother probably said early on, which is a simple definition of mentorship in many ways, and that is listen to everyone because they all have something to tell you. Now, it may be that in time you don't listen very long to certain people, but you still listen because everyone can provide some input. It is a collaboration. Of course, that's not to say at the end of the day, you have to be the decision maker. You have to make a decision with all of the advice. And the decision you make has to be something, frankly, as a guide. And that is, every decision you make should be able to be on the front page of the LA Times or the New York Times or the Bee. And you should be proud of it. And you should be able to back up and affirm whatever decision you made transparently with facts. People may disagree with you, and that is their right. But they shouldn't be able to disagree with your process or the way the outcome came out. They can disagree. I've worked with many, many people. I've had many bosses. I don't always agree with their ultimate decision, but I respect how they came to it. And that's the consistency you need. That's the mentorship. That's the assistance. That's the aid. And it also helps you feel like you are not alone in the world. I belong to the Conference of Chief Justices. In the United States, 50 states, there is the Chief Justice of every state. We meet regularly to talk about our problems behind closed doors, to share state perspectives, to compare what the state is doing versus what Congress is requiring us to do. We also meet with the Chief Justices of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and Guam. So basically, the 53 of us get together regularly. This is where we mentor each other professionally, where we have many issues in common, where we talk about our philosophies, where we are able to form relationships that make us feel like we are not alone in the world. That's what it is. We are not alone, but in order to open up, in order to see that, we have to seek out those relationships. We learn from every single one of them. Some we may not pursue, some we may end, but you can only benefit from being a mentor and being a mentee. I recommend it highly. It keeps life fresh and interesting, and I really mean that the value of having your own board of directors will suit you well in the long run and keep you sane.